All right, this video is for Module 39 about motivation and work. So this first video is having to do with flow. So flow, first of all, is something that people look to try and experience in their work as well as in their personal life. And what flow is it basically is this idea where you kind of get caught up in what you're doing, and you actually lose track of yourself as well as time. So think of it as examples of times where you got so involved in what you were doing, whether that be, I had some people that were talking about in class exercising, reading a book, or some project that you're doing. My sister does this sometimes with art, where you get so caught up in things that you lose track of yourself. And for example, you may not notice that you're hungry or you're thirsty, or even if you have to go to the bathroom, or that you lose track of time, and you're working so hard on it, and all of a sudden you stop, you look at the clock, you're like, oh my gosh, has it been 3 hours? And you start to, really get in the groove of things. Now, flow is this kind of this nice middle ground, and it's very similar to when we talked about that theory of arousal, where you are balancing your abilities and your challenge. So if you remember when we talked about the arousal theory, we talked about, when something is too hard, too challenging, and you don't have the abilities to do it, it creates anxiety and stress, and you're freaking out about it because, oh my gosh, this is so hard and I can't do it, I don't have the skills to do it. Creates too much anxiety. However, if it's a too low of a challenge, and you have high ability in a particular area, it makes you bored. You're like, ugh, this is so easy. I could do this in my sleep. Oh, this is dumb. I don't want to do this. But flow is kind of this sweet spot in the middle, right? Where it's a balance above that it is somewhat challenging, and you do have the abilities to do it, and you just get caught up in that particular activity. Okay? So in order to achieve this in society, what we need to have more of is we need to, for example, make jobs more challenging and meaningful. You need to, everything from the trash collector all the way up to the university president, they need to each have a meaningful challenge for themselves. Okay? They need to feel like they're important. This is a survey that I found, and I don't remember how many people were involved in the survey, but it was in response to the question, does your job make the world a better place? So notice that this is looking at breakdown between males and females, but very much so. It was more so females than males that said, very much so, my job makes the world a better place. But in order to be, feeling satisfied with your job, to be able to achieve that flow, you have to feel like you're contributing something that is meaningful and it's important, not only to the organization, but potentially to the world as well. Work has to also challenge ourselves. You need to have some sort of a job and position that's going to challenge your abilities and skills. If it's doing the same old thing every single day, you're going to get bored, as well as when you get bored, you tend to make more mistakes and your productivity declines. And then lastly, we also need to assess leisure activities, because leisure activities are important when looking at flow as well. For example, what studies have found is that simple activities like, for example, going to the park or riding your bike, simple activities that are very low in cost, very low tech, those are going to be more meaningful to you than, for example, sitting and watching the television more often, right? So keep in mind that leisure activities can also follow with flow. Now, there are limitations to flow. So the first limitation is that sometimes you experience flow in an activity that at the time is going to be, rewarding to you. At the time you enjoy it and you like it, but in the long run it detracts from happiness. I have this picture up here of graffiti. Have you ever seen really paid attention to graffiti, or to tagging as they call it? Obviously there's some graffiti that's just graffiti and it's lame, but this picture, I particularly chose this picture because look at it. I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces here. There's a lot of elements to design and color and form, and so that's that's great now, but obviously in the long run, they're probably going to get picked up for tagging. They're going to they're probably going to see legal ramifications for that. So in the long run, not the best activity to choose, right? So it's better to choose some activities that are going to give you that sense of flow, but are more productive and not going to detract from your happiness. My sister, for example, like I've told you, is an art teacher in Las Vegas, and she has had some students that were taggers. And rather than going and ragging on them about tagging, she would go and try and turn the direction more towards, appropriate places to put their artwork. And talking about, okay, I recognize that, you put a lot of effort into this, but let's move it someplace else that maybe is a little better. The other limit to flow is that you might find enjoyment in only one thing and neglect everything else. These people that, for example, when we're talking about work, would be those people that only get that high from work. They only are aroused by the work that they are doing. So everything else is like, meh, hum ho, whatever, I'm bored, right? And so the problem with that obviously is that then you will have instances of like home life, for example, where they don't show that same enthusiasm that they showed at work. I have this picture, the cartoon, and you have the woman that's getting a massage here, and she's still on the computer, tapping along on the computer, and the masseuse says, "Let me guess, you're one of those workaholic types." She just can't let it go. So here's what I want you to think about is that do you ever get involved in something so deeply that you lose track of time, nothing else matters? In class, we had students discuss this as in their groups and talk about, how often does this happen, describe some of the experiences, but then I also wanted them to talk about in their group if these experiences fit with some of these characteristics of flow. Jackson and Marsh actually did a study that looked at the commonalities of people who experience flow, and these are kind of some of the commonalities, characteristics. This balance between challenge and skill, the action awareness merging and coming together, having clear goals, having clear feedback, being very focused and concentrated, have a sense of control, loss of self-consciousness, again, losing track of yourself if you're hungry or thirsty, transformation of time, losing track of time, and intrinsically motivating. You're motivated by, getting the job done yourself. So I want you to think about that as far as when you've experienced flow for you, and how do people try and help you experience flow? So this is kind of the end of the video. Look for the next video that is talking about industrial organizational psychology.